The average person calls 911 twice in their lifetime. What crazy thing happened that made you call? Watched a guy have a heart attack right in front of me mid-conversation at work. He didn't make it. Called the cops on a pregnant lady who was holding a baby with her. Doing some driving one night as an Uber driver. A pregnant lady gets in the car with her one-year baby. No problems until we get to the destination. She asks for help finding her friend's apartment. Says she can't walk on her own. I help her walk and hold the baby in the baby seat thing cause she's really preggo I guess. Can't find her friend but she's freaking out and yelling at neighbors. She lost her phone so can't call her friend. Starts acting weird and asks me for a cigarette and I'm like WTF no, let me drive you back to your home PLS. She flips out more and tries to enter some big dude's apartment. He's like who are you, is that your baby? She's like no, it's my friend's. We're like WTF. I say hey, that's not your baby? She says she's joking. She falls over and hits the ground, baby in hand. She's on some drugs for sure or drunk. Me and the big dude get her to sit and chill and I call in the police cause she obviously is too high drunk to keep herself or more importantly the baby safe. They come and take her away. She's yelling she already has a record and will lose custody and that coming to California was a mistake and crying like a maniac. Big dude says I did the right thing and that it wasn't snitching and he's a felon so he knows the deal. Good man TBH. Duckin went home and drank a bunch and smoked a bit to forget all about it. Still wondering where that baby is now. We saw an agitated guy run out onto a 4-lane street, throw himself down and roll on the ground. Called 911 to get him off the street and whatever help he needed. Turned out some asshole taxi driver pepper sprayed him in the eye when he tried to get directions from him. Taxi driver said he was on break, so he didn't want to be disturbed while parked at the freaking train station. The guy was completely blind and unaware he'd run onto the street. Also scared, wary of anyone approaching him because he couldn't establish whether we were there to help or continue the attack. Probably would have been fine to call the non-emergency line in retrospect. But we only found all of this out after the police and the ambulance had arrived. Hey there, are you subscribed yet? Please do. Also leave a like on this video to help out the channel. Was driving between Prince George and McBride a few years back and, on a twisty bit of road, saw a plume of smoke deep in the bush. Rang the wildfire hotline at the next mile marker and drove on. Once we got home, we get a phone call saying a chopper had been dispatched, found a baby fire trying to get big, and was able to put it out. The child in me is still excited that I made a phone call and got a helicopter launched. I'm above average, I guess. Asterisk and uncle had a stroke while visiting. Asterisk was a passganger in the car while the driver had a seizure, luckily while at a stop sign, so we just rolled through an intersection into a pole, at like 5 miles per hour. Asterisk witnessed a bicyclist get nailed by a vehicle. Asterisk witnessed a shark attack. My aunt was unconscious. 911 told me I was lying as my voice was still so soft when I was 18 and they thought I was a child and they asked for my aunt to come to the phone. Good thing my grandma came back from the shop and called for help. Called 999 in the UK once. The couple who lived in the flat downstairs from us used to argue and fight all the time. We were used to it. But not like this day. It started out with the shouting and screaming we were used to, but it quickly escalated to hearing her being beaten from one end of the flat to the other and the screams became pain, rather than rage. Then he must have picked something heavy up and thrown it at her. It fortunately missed and shattered one of their windows out into the back court where some kids were playing. It was loud enough that the operator caught it. The girl moved back to her parents that day, but as far as I know, no further action was taken. He moved out and a new family moved into that flat soon after. We moved a year later, but only a short distance away. 3 months after we moved, a fire broke out in the circuit breaker cupboard in that same flat. It turned out that the abuser had bridged his electricity meter to try and defraud the electricity supplier. It hadn't been well done, and the whole thing was a ticking time bomb. No one in the flat was hurt, but one of the upstairs neighbors hurt her back from having to drop out of an upper floor window because by the time she woke up, the close was impassable. I was glad to be rid of that guy, he was an all-round scumbag. Bomb threat on public transport. Crazy dude going completely psycho, also on public transport. Saw an old man get T-boned in an intersection I was walking parallel to. His door got wedged shut, and he was bleeding badly by the time I got to him, called 911 and they ended up using the jaws of life to open his car up like a tuna can. I'm glad you are enjoying this video. Before we continue, don't forget to like, subscribe and leave a comment. I'm quite above the average. 2 robberies, 3 or 4 for a client pulling a peg tube out, 2 for clients that have fainted, and 2 for car accidents that I witnessed and had injured people. Mofo ran a stop sign and hit me head on without touching the brakes. Later said it was my fault because I was in the way. I didn't call 911, but the only situation that really meets the requirements was that time in high school when I got up early to go to before school baseball practice. After practice I came home to shower, change clothes, and I noticed the house smelled kinda weird. Like a propane gas type smell. I went to tell my parents I thought something smelled weird. Went to their bedroom and only my mom was in there. Told her. We came downstairs and coincidentally my dad was coming up from the basement at the same time, except he sorta passed out and fell on the stairs. My mom freaked out and called an ambulance. Long story short, we lived in a super old house built in the 1920s, and something went wrong with the furnace in the basement, and that morning the house had slowly been filling up with carbon monoxide. My dad, having been in the basement watching TV that early morning, suffered the brunt of it. I just happened to notice the smell because I left and came back and noticed the contrast, unlike the rest of my family who'd been slowly exposed to it and didn't notice. Everyone is fine. This was like 20 plus years ago. My dad is still alive and well. We've always had carbon monoxide alarms in our houses ever since. I do wonder though, if it had been a weekend, and I didn't need to get up super early to go to practice, if we'd have all just slept in and never woke up. A drunken woman made a right turn in front of me. We were in straight road, no intersection, and I was in the rightmost lane. She turned right and kept going right. She overturned her car, so I stopped, and walked back to the accident while calling 911. I used to be a grocery store manager. Seizure, heart attack, and a couple kids who fell out of a cart on their head or broken arm. Oh, and one time a drunk guy drove into my friend's car that was parked in the street in front of my house doing like 50 miles per hour. A naked 30-year-old guy wrestling a clothed 50-year-old neighbor in front of my house. Turns out the naked guy was abusing his girlfriend and the older guy was their live-in landlord. Once I called the cops, the 30-year-old guy ran back into their house and the crying girlfriend went out on the second-floor balcony. Fearing for her safety, I went into the house with one of my other neighbors. I was 36, he was late 40s. Barefoot with my arms extended in guard, I slowly walked in and up the stairs waiting for this guy to jump out at me. As I got to the top of the stairs, I see the bathroom window open and the police come rushing in. The guy got away for a few hours running between the backyards of our neighborhood, but the police finally caught him around midnight. 999 for me. A drug addict burst into my house wearing nothing but his underpants. He was ranting like a madman. I ran at him and hit him so hard he flew back out through the door. I slammed the door shut, locked it, and called the police. Found my father dead in his house. I've called twice this year. Once because my now ex-girlfriend threw a rock through my window. A couple months later I accidentally left my door unlocked and some random people came in to rob me but ended up shooting me and fleeing. The same officer responded to both incidents. I've now moved out of that place. Found my mom dead. Since I have a childlike voice, the poor guy receiving the call thought I was a child, so the paramedics were prepared to find a child with their dead mother. They were shocked I was an adult. I don't really remember what I said to the guy, but I do remember apologizing for having a total panic attack while trying to tell him my address. I felt bad for stumbling over my words. I later realized how crazy that was. Had to call once. Random 64th degree day in February one year and I decided to take a bike ride. As I was riding past a house I heard a woman crying for help. She was older and had slipped on the ice in her driveway. I tried to get her up, but I was 14 and she was bigger. I called 911 and they got her to the hospital. Turns out she had slipped hours before and was on the verge of hypothermia. I'm a home health nurse, so I call out a lot, but this one is the most recent and most impacting on me. On the 15th I called 911 on my hospice patient's wife. She was so weak she could not stand. She was shaking. O2 was 84, resps were 37. She was COVID positive. It's my most crazy because she was lucid, and she could refuse transport. To get her to go, I promised her I would take care of her spouse until she came home. She was placed on event Sunday the 18th. Her sons decided to withdraw care last night, and she passed at 1:10 this morning. I have gone to my patient's home 3 times a day for the last 16 days, and will continue until he transitions. When I was in my apartment one night when I heard people shooting right outside my window. I immediately called the police and set up a camera to maybe catch something. The camera ran for 8 hours. I stayed up for another 3 before sleeping in another room. In the morning I checked the camera. No cops showed up. There could have been some poor person in that back alley bleeding to death and no one came for them. And #X200B, too, so this older gas station attendant was murdered by these 3 people. The local news showed the picture of them clearly. The next day, not 24 hours later, I went to a casino with my grandmother for the buffet, and who should be hanging out at the main entrance. The 3 murderers. Same clothes and everything, and we were just a few blocks away from where it happened. I immediately called 911, they told me to call the homicide department. I did. I got a ducking machine telling me that homicide closes at 4 p.m. So I call 911 again and say that they need to get someone there because these 3 people are going to get away. Nothing. They didn't send anyone, they didn't do anything, they didn't care. I only hope that the family of the poor gas station attendant somehow got justice or closure, because the police certainly didn't provide it.